Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And we are back, and we're jumping into our COVID-19 update, and we have our first conversation for this morning with John Burgos, who is the Executive Director of the Belize Tourism Industry Association. Good morning, John.
Hi, good morning, Marlene. Good morning, Gavin.
All right, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. So, as we started off our discussion on the show this morning, one of the most important announcements that was made yesterday was, of course, that the scheduled reopening for the Philip Goldson International Airport for August 15th will no longer take place and is delayed until further notice. And of course, this means something very significant for the tourism industry, which has already been going through so much since the start of the pandemic. So we can just start by getting your reaction to this delay and some of the Prime Minister's comments that were made yesterday. So what was your initial reaction to the delaying of the opening of the airport?
Well, I understand the decision being made due to the circumstances at hand. You know, I think a lot of people had it in the back of their minds, anticipating that the possibility of extending the reopening or moving it more ahead, you know. But it's really difficult, and I'm sure a lot of our members are really disappointed that this is the way things are turning out, because they were making all the necessary preparations. You know, it's about, you know, and once you have an operation, you invest certain time, you invest certain money, and I know that now having to put everything on hold once again, it puts them at a very sad situation, to say the least, whereby they have to reassess as to how they're going to prepare for what's coming, no?
Yeah, yeah. You know, I think that when the news came out on Sunday, it was a possibility. I know in conversations that people were thinking it would have happened. Just going back though, when the BTIA did its study, your membership was actually very much open to a later date. Do you think that with the delay that is something that they're still going to be comfortable with?
Well, I mean, we understand how too many unknowns that are present. You know, it's hard for you to plan 2-3 months ahead of time. You know, still waiting for other nations to normalize and to stabilize the situation of the COVID-19 and the spread. That unfortunately, that has not been happening, and that trickles down to Belize.
Yeah,
we are going to feel the pressure even more once those countries cannot get they manage the COVID-19 spread more efficiently. So I mean, it puts us at a disadvantage because we can't really plan, and that's where I think a lot of our members wanted to have some level of comfort in knowing that, you know, we can plan for August 15. Yeah. Many of them had already stated that they were not going to be opening until November, and I know several of them had a campaign stating that they were not to reopen the TGIA because of the situation in the U.S. You know, but now the reality sets in. It's beginning to set in. You know, it was just made yesterday, so a lot of people I'm sure a lot of people lost sleep last night, thinking about what the consequences are and what measures they need to take and steps they need to take to deal with what the reality is now.
And do you think that, well, or have you received so much or any feedback from your members in relation to how they've been managing so far with, you know, sort of the opening of local activity, whether that's caused any relief, whether they've been able to, you know, recover a little bit from the initial parts of the lockdown so that perhaps the delayed reopening is not going to be such a hard hit again?
I mean, from the moment the country was open and began to promote local travelers, it certainly brought some revenues to many properties. They welcomed the opportunity of rehiring some of their staff, and they were managing pretty good. I think the revenues were decent enough to say that they were not incurring costs. They were maybe having enough to spread it around with their staff. So that was very positive, you know, and that's the reason I think many of them got very comfortable. To an extent, I can say that they brought on their guards, you know, because I mean, you're trying to influence a cultural change of what a new normal is. And the new normal requires for you to keep your social distancing, wear your mask properly, you know, and all the other things that fall on the keeping yourself safe and others.
You know, it's so interesting, John. We had this conversation scheduled with you. We were supposed to talk about the level of preparation from your members for August 15th, and here we are talking about the indefinite delay. But it still warrants the question, I think, in looking at how your membership was doing in being able to meet some of the certification requirement. How did hoteliers feel about being able to implement what was necessary to get that certification?
Well, the certification process it's ongoing. The members are not gonna stop that process to get themselves certified, whether you're a hotel or whether you're a tour operator. I know there were many questions that were raised, many concerns that were raised, and they were presented to the Belize Tourism Board, the agency monitoring and providing that certification process. And I think that, you know, as we move along, things are being addressed. Information is at the beginning was a little bit limited. I think right now information is better available. And I think that the stakeholders do understand the need to be able to be prepared in the manner that has been laid out by the BTIA and the Ministry of Tourism. So they're doing their part to become compliant. But the main focus for them still remains on being able to receive international tourists. So that is where they still have their concerns, you know. And I know I'm very pleased right now to see that the financing being available through DFC and through Beltrade, or the National Bank of Belize, you know, to provide funding, and some of the funding can be used by the proprietors to be able to meet the standards. Because to meet the standards, it does come with an additional cost. Just to get your staff training has a cost. You need to get certain materials and equipment that comes with a cost. So this financing program is allowing for people to access funding to be able to meet this standards. So
that's encouraging to hear. What I'm also wondering is, since this delay was only, or the delay of the opening of the airport, I mean to international visitors, was only announced yesterday. Of course, it meant that persons would have booked flights, they may have booked reservations. So I'm wondering if you had any feedback from your membership about sort of what they were expecting and what sort of the impact that will be had now that the things will be cancelled, that the airport will not be open again, and of course that means that whatever reservations that might have been made would be cancelled.
Well, I haven't been able to receive much feedback because this just happened yesterday. You know, people are observing and trying to assess how it affects them. But I do know that there's a lot of travelers, a lot of people that have, because I have been receiving a lot of emails from international people that want information and if they want to plan a trip to Belize. You have to understand that there's a large number of people that have investing in Belize, people that are looking to relocate to Belize, to come and live in Belize, and did not see the pandemic coming, so they got stuck outside of Belize. And some of them are also in the process of becoming a citizen. So, you know, so all of that has been put on pause. And one of the so these travelers composed of many of them trying to come back to Belize so that they can continue whatever works at their home, whatever process with the immigration department, and any other investment in the country. They wanted to come back and do follow up with that. And I know that at the same time they felt very safe coming to Belize because we had it under control. And as you hear me say, I say we had it until yesterday. We realized that we're losing control of the spread of the virus. So that kind of may have an impact on how these international tourists see themselves coming to Belize now. But I know locally people will be have been disappointed. I know them. They're not taking this decision lightly from the government, and they're certainly going to feel the economic impact because a lot of them, if you have reservations, and I know a lot of people had reservations for August, beyond August 15, for September, for October, and they were increasing very positive numbers. So not being able to open the airport, and then now you hear the side of the airlines are going to make their decision as well. So that's going to.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, because I think that's one of the things that we are still. Of course, the Prime Minister received the response from American Airlines, which he shared in the press conference. But I'm sure there's further dialogue that has to take place with airlines to get a definitive picture as to how cooperative they'll be, how they can work with destinations like Belize. How concerning is that part? If airlines decide that they won't return to Belize or to this region until next year, because then that just changes our own level of control and being able to reopen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the most serious impact of not being able to open a PGIA, that these airlines make decisions that's going to suit them. I mean, they're trying to accommodate countries like Belize, but remember, we're very small. We don't form a large part of their market share. And for them to make the decision, it's a financial decision which we have to understand, and we cannot blame them.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, it's really, that's going to be our main limitation and challenge, is to get those airlines back into the country.
Okay. Now, so that's one of the areas that you're looking at. What are some of the other, I mean, we got some information about the arrival process. We know they were building what would have been somewhat of a testing facility on the grounds. How comfortable, what are some of the other areas that now that we have time, you and your membership will be looking at to ensure that we can be even more prepared when another date is set?
Well, I can share with you that on Tuesday, I got the opportunity to go and visit get a run through of the airport and the improvements that have been made. I gotta say, I'm very pleased to see that the expansion, the new section there, it looks good. It looks like it's gonna work properly. I think all the efficiencies is gonna be dependent on how good the staff is prepared to deal with the amount of people that are going to be coming. Everything is almost completely completed in terms of construction-wise. All the signage is almost there. They're just doing the final touching, you know, the finishings, and to ensure that everything is there. I mean, the AC was running, the paint, everything. I mean, it's run. And I can share with you, they have 2 conveyor belts now. They're larger as well. The previous conveyor belts used to cater to 300 luggage bags. Now the new conveyor belts cater to 500 bags and luggage bags each. So that gives you a sense, and it has been expanded as well. And the area for the Ministry of Health was built to very specific specifications, you know, with construction criteria that was provided by the Ministry of Health, and it looks really good. And I saw that they have their machine there that does the testing for the COVID-19. So the construction manager told me that they would be ready by Saturday this weekend. So that lets you know how good we have been doing in terms of preparing for the August 15th. So government making the decision to hold on to postpone the reopening of the PJ, it was not an easy decision.
Yeah.
And I know that, and I said, well, I know that we touched on it a little bit earlier, but in terms of your membership and the preparations that they would have been making in order to accommodate international guests, Did you get an idea of how much they were doing, how much, you know, whether they were doing things informed by the ministry, whether they're retrofitting certain things, and in order and putting in place, of course, policies and protocols for their own staff to protect the safety of the staff and the other guests?
Yes. They have been very active with the various webinars and trainings that have been provided by the Belize Tourism Board to meet the gold standards that have been prepared. And if you look at the gold standards, they're very detailed. There's a lot of processes there, and I know that the stakeholders and the hoteliers and the tour operators have taken it seriously and have been trying their best to meet the requirements.
So looking at what was the first phase of the reopening, one of the things that we'd noted very early on is that there would only be a certain number of hotels that were going to be able to cater to what was required. They had to be, they had to have the full complement of services. They had to have, whether it's pool or beach access, they had to have a restaurant on site. So essentially when a tourist arrives there, they'd be able to get everything they need. From your membership though, because I know you work with others other than just the large-scale hotels, what would you say was the sentiment of those who weren't going to be able to participate this early on?
Many were not pleased with that announcement. They felt that they've been left out. You know, and you as a smaller property, you know, if you have 5 guests, that's a lot of revenue that comes into your property that goes a long way. Instead of these larger properties that they may need 50 guests for them to actually see some level of revenue that is profitable for them, you know. So many of them felt left out, and even the small tour operators, the smaller the property or the smaller your operation, the more limited the opportunities are. And I think that's where there was a lot of discontent, because many of them felt that, you know, we are not being considered as part of this tourism industry, and priority is being given. But we understand, I think many of them, as time passed, they understand why they wanted to open it this way, part of this space, to better manage it. You know, it's all about management. But I think that there's a lot of guests that already have a standing relation with many properties, and many properties that are not able to meet the required standards for this phase, that for the reopening of during this phase. But now all of that goes out the window.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is gonna impact the phasing out the various phases that the Ministry of Tourism and the Belize Tourism Board had prepared and planned for. So they're gonna, I'm guessing they're gonna be sitting down and reviewing and revising that phase plan, no?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we just gotta wait and see.
So let's talk about the other big issue, which is the recovery loans that have been offered through the government. So the facility is $10 million. It's being lent out through the DFC. And it's interesting because I know that you had met, the BTIA had met with DFC, and you'd been advocating for something like this. John, talk to us about the response so far, just how much this is actually, how much it's going to help those within the sector.
Well, we conducted our economic impact survey. We wanted to know from our members what level of impact, the economic impact they have been feeling due to COVID since March. And we did this survey in June. We received 50 responses from stakeholders that were interested, and they range from $10,000 to $1.5 million. At the time, the total was $14 million of financial assistance. And that's where we decided that let's initiate this discussion with government. We sent a proposal to position paper to government stating our views. We shared that position with the Development Finance Corporation, and I gotta give credit to Ms. Natalie Goff, the manager. She was very receptive of what we presented, and then that's where we began to have the discussions of what we were looking for. You know, and the program basically is to allow people some breathing room right now to be able to withstand the economic impact right now, or the complete loss of revenues. So I'm very pleased to see the program that the initial program that the DFC has presented. I mean, it has some very good terms. I mean, the interest rate is 6%.
Yeah.
They're allowing you a 12-month grace period for principal and interest payments, you know. So, and then they have mentioned that, you know, if the number of applicants exceeds the $10 million, they're going to be continue to try to secure additional funding so that they can make it available.
Yeah.
So this is definitely very rewarding and gratifying to many stakeholders.
Yeah. Do you know what they're using it for? I mean, what's they're accessing the funds, I'm sure, but what are they using it for?
Well, they use the term saying that it's for operational. They want you to be able to keep your operation open.
Yeah.
They want you to be able to provide employment opportunities to at least 30% of their staff. So, and they also provided funding for if you need funding to meet the gold standards requirements.
Yeah.
So it encompasses all of that. So a lot of I know a big expense of that is training. So I know that whatever funding has been accessed is going to be used for training of the staff. No. So that 30% might be a little bit higher because of the operation that you may have, you know, and 30% might be too limited for them to really get prepared. And I know many of our members have staff on rotation.
Yeah.
So if you have staff of 50 or 60, you know, you bring some this week, you bring some the following week, but you still have 50 employees. So that might be.
Do you think Sorry, no. I thought you were finished. But do you think that people, that you'll have to go back and look at the terms for the loan as well? Because, of course, ensuring that you maintain 30% of your staff, or if you're using the money for gold standards, these were all under the impression that we were going to be opening the airport, and even if people were going to see a trickle, they'd be getting some revenue in, and even the need for staff.
I believe the DFC is going to do their due diligence to ensure that, and they have a phase-out stage. They're not going to give you I think they're not going to give you the money one lump sum. They're going to do it by stages based on your proposal of how the funding is going to be used.
Okay.
So, and that's the reason I think that if I recall properly with the discussions that we held with them, is that they stated to us that they're going to provide a grace period of 12 months. And that grace period means you can apply in August, but if you're planning to open in November, you can begin to access your funding either in September, in October, so that you can get whatever materials or whatever training you need.
Yeah. Well, so what is the plan? I know you, the BTIA had their forum, was it a week or two ago, and quite a bit of looking forward and having discussions about how to function in this new world was a part of the agenda. Do you think you guys were able to cover some of the issues that will help people through a time like this, where the reopening is delayed, there's uncertainty again? Without doubt, because it is the safest thing for us to do at this time. But do you feel that members were able to get some of the conversation started on the way ahead?
The forum certainly exceeded our expectations. The feedback from the membership was extremely positive. They were very pleased of the forum, and they're being allowed to express some views, and then for all the information sharing. I think the Q&A sessions really open up the discussions for each of the panels.
Yeah.
And I think that the panelists, I gotta commend the panelists that supported us. They did a great job of sharing whatever information they have available. I mean, we started with Dr. Manzanero in the morning to discuss whether the gold standards would work, whether the protocols in place would work. You know, and he did stress he was in support of reopening of the 15th of August. He said this is the good time, ideal time, so that we can manage the smaller number of tourists coming into the country. We look at the airlines, and, you know, Mr. Anthony Hunt presented a very clear picture of how serious the situation is with regards to airlines coming back to Belize. You know, he showed where Belize really is. In comparison to the region, you know, we're a very small speck on the charts if you look at it in terms of numbers. For ours, are record numbers when you look at it to the number of visitors that Mexico gets per day, and Guatemala and Barbados, Jamaica, and so on. The numbers are far, far, far ahead of us. So, you know, and then we look at the BTV sharing their strategies, what they're doing right now with the marketing. Post-COVID, we heard from two other key stakeholders, you know, one from the private sector, one from the Belize Hotel Association. Yeah. You know, everybody understands what we need to do. We need to remain on the minds of our potential tourists, you know, and we have to find creative ways of being able to promote what we have to offer. Our resources, our people, our culture, our food. So those efforts are going to continue. And I think people understood even more. The closing of the event focused on the vision for tourism. And I had three heavy hitters to say. I had Ms. Valerie Woods, a former senator and a former director of the BTV. We had the current director of the BTV, Mrs. Karen Bevans, and then we had the chief tourism officer from the Ministry of Tourism, Mr. Abel Castañeda. And they all share their views. And I think the surrounding, the conclusive point that three of them made was that we gotta join forces, we gotta work together, and we gotta maximize whatever resources we have available so that we together can move this industry forward and towards the recovery.
Well, as we said, this is really just a preliminary discussion, and yet there is probably a lot of conversations that have to be had from this point forward, but we do appreciate hearing from you, John, and best of luck.
Thank you. We will be sharing a report with our members, well, a little synopsis of the forum, so they can look out for that on the next bulletin next week.
Excellent. Right. Thank you, and stay safe.
You too, guys.
All right.
Don't miss the tacos.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. We talked a bit about a reaction from the tourism sector. When we come back, we're going to be diving into the details of a survey conducted in Belize with parents about their perceptions of children going back into the classroom and how they envision the new school year should look like. That's coming up after the break.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.